Do you know when a person improves their self-image, they change their entire life? Their income changes, their relationship changes, their health changes. And do you know how you do that? Start studying you. Start to find out more about you. There's something phenomenal about you.
Throughout history, the most successful people on planet Earth have used a secret technique to create their success. It's called the law of assumption. The only thing separating you from these great successful people is that they were able to use these strategies because they were aware of them. These three well-known people who you may recognize discuss their law of assumption success stories. It was first discovered by Neville Goddard. Neville said, "You must assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled until your assumption has all the sensory vividness of reality." In the spring of 1943, a recently drafted soldier was stationed in a large army camp in Louisiana. He was intensely eager to get out of the army, but only in an entirely honorable way and without any conscious influence over any of the army generals. The only way he could do this was to apply for a discharge. To take effect, the application needed his commanding officer's approval. After completing all the required steps, the soldier submitted an application for discharge. Within 4 hours, his application was returned, marked disapproved. Convinced he could not appeal the decision to any higher authority, he turned to his own consciousness, determined to rely on the law of assumption. He visualized his apartment. That is, in his mind's eye, he actually saw his own apartment. He imagined himself to be in his own apartment in New York City. He moved toward his bedroom, assuming he was in his own room and that he was lying on his own bed, mentally imagining all of the familiar rooms with all of the furnishings looking remarkably real. He did all this from the assumption that he had been honorably discharged from the army and that he was no longer in the army. All he could think of was that he was already everything he had ever wanted to be. Night after night, the soldier enacted this drama. Night after night in imagination, he felt himself honorably discharged, back at his home seeing all the familiar surroundings and falling asleep in his own bed. On the 9th day, the colonel stated that although he personally disagreed and had strong objections to the discharge, he had decided to overlook these objections and to approve it. The application was accepted. In a matter of hours, the soldier, who was now a civilian, was on a train bound for home. Jim Carrey said that he would visualize having directors interested in him and people that he respected saying, "I like your work," and he would visualize things that he wanted coming to him. He wrote himself a check for $10 million for acting services rendered, and he gave himself 3 years, and he dated at Thanksgiving 1995. He put it in his wallet, and he kept it there, and it deteriorated and deteriorated, but
just before Thanksgiving 1995, I found out that I was going to make $10 million on Dumb and Dumber.
The remarkable story of Helen Hadsell, who is also known as the contest queen, who won over 5,000 contests, all by using the power of her mind. Her incredible track record of winning contests came from Helen Hadsell's 4 steps mind-controlling technique, the SPEC technique. It stands for Select, Project, Expect, and Collect. With this technique, you can cause your dream to be pulled into reality. Helen would assume she'd won the prize. She projected it in her mind, just like winning the house. She would pretend as if she had already won the house together with her husband and kids. She was so sure that she'd won the prize, she began to live in the end results in her mind's eye. She then went out and chose a lot for her new house along with her family, had the house plan drawn up, and also mentally placed new appliances in her new home before she was declared the winner. She knew she was going to win. The only question she would ask was how long the sponsors would take to notify her. That's positive thinking. You use your mental power to the fullest, and once you're in this vein of positive thinking, things happen to you. About a month later, she was notified as the winner. These outstanding people all used the law of assumption to their advantage in order to achieve their desires. By this point, you might be wondering if there are any research studies that back up the law of assumption or visualization. Well, indeed, yes. In one study, which involved taking 3 groups of people who were complete beginners at basketball, the researchers showed the astounding effects of mental rehearsal and how it affects the development of neural networks in the brain. What they did was they took 3 different groups of people that were total beginners in basketball, people that weren't good at all, and they did a 5-day study in 3 different groups of people. They instructed one group to spend 2 hours a day for 5 days in a row, physically practicing a specific skill in order to throw a basketball into the hoop. In the second group, they asked them to play basketball without any instruction or knowledge. For 2 hours a day, they were to spend their time on the basketball court, hitting around and trying to become a little accustomed to the ball and the surroundings. Group number 3 was not allowed to touch the ball, but they were instructed to sit in the same court as group number 1 and listen to the same instructions regarding the skills that group number 1 had been taught. Group number 3 received the same instruction, but for 5 days, they were required to mentally practice the skill for 2 hours each day, rather than engaging in physical practice. What they do is they imagine themselves in the experience of playing basketball for 2 hours every day, but they never touch the ball. Instead, they just put themselves in the scenario. The researchers used transcranial magnetic stimulation devices to measure the brain activity of all the different participants. These are electrodes placed on the top of the brain, allowing for the measurement of various brain activity patterns. At the end of the 5 days, group number 3 showed nearly identical changes in the brain to group number 1. There was significant growth and development of their neural networks, but group number 2 didn't have any changes at all. The group that imagined it and the group that actually did it had nearly identical neural cell activity, brain waves, and stimulating the same part of their brain as if they were playing it, even though they were just imagining it. These are scientifically proven to work, that your brain can actually change to a reality that hasn't happened yet. But how do you actually do it? Assume that you desire a basketball. The first thing you would do is mentally picture a basketball without engaging with it. For the time being, you'll just concentrate on getting that image as clear as you can, concentrating on every aspect of the ball that comes to mind, including its color, shape, size, and details, like the line that runs through it. Make a strong connection with those images. Next, you make your way onto the scene. Engage with it. You make contact with the ball, allow yourself to feel its structure, and essentially experience it as though it were in your hand at that very moment. Feel and enjoy the moment of playing with it, brilliantly scoring goals. It's more about the feelings and emotions connected to success than it is about the visuals and imagery alone. As Neville said, feeling is the secret. If you desire something, assume you already have it. If you can dare to persist in your assumptions, they will harden into fact.